The great, the rich, and the poor. Jesus is going through Jericho as he's going up to Jerusalem. Now, this will be the last trip that Jesus will take up to the city before the triumphal entry. He's taken this way many times. As a young man of 12 years old, he went to the temple, and then every year thereafter, he would go through this very way going up. He's passing by Jericho, which is the lowest city in the entire world, 1,200 feet below sea level. As far as people can figure, it's also the oldest city in the entire world. I find it interesting that Bartimaeus calls Jesus son of David because this was the way that David took when he came out of the city, running away from his son Absalom. He came down the same road, and then when he went back to Jerusalem, he went right up it. So Jesus is actually following that very same path. The issue with James and John about the right hand and the left. Of course, all of the monarchs, the kings, the place of honor was on the right hand, and the place of the second was on the left. And so this was on their minds. Has nothing to do with our story, but King Saul, the person who sat on his right hand was his son Jonathan. One who sat on his left hand was not David, but was his commander Abner. The area of taxes, we think in the New Testament of the despised tax collector. Well, the upper echelons of the tax collecting system was not that way at all. These are people who lived in Rome. They were wealthy. Matter of fact, they had to pay a lot of money to be given a region. And they weren't as high up as a Roman senator, but they were really quite a well-respected people. The people that are mentioned in the New Testament were at the bottom of the rung. These were actually more like custom house officials, tax gatherers. These were people that were selected among the various nations, the people that were actually nationals. They were considered traitors, and they would extract too much from the people. Matthew, one of the disciples, had been one of these tax gatherers, the lowest one. Well, Zaccheus was in a position that's halfway between those tax gatherers and the people in Rome. So he was more like a tax commissioner. They would collect tax from people who lived in the area, tax on what people bought or what people sold, even tax on the fish that people would catch. But they positioned themselves at major highways, bridges, thoroughfares, because their major tax would come from people who were transporting goods from one nation to another or from one area to another. That's why this area was so important, this funnel that would go between the great desert and the Mediterranean Sea, between all the great kingdoms of the world. They would funnel through this little area right here. And Zaccheus had a very important position. He was on the west side of the Jordan River, the road that went from the King's Highway up to Jerusalem. So he was a very wealthy person, and he hired other tax gatherers that would gather taxes from around about. A very important position. I think about Bartimaeus. I've often thought how when he could see and he looked at the face of Jesus and immediately started following Jesus, what he must have thought. And about 2 weeks later, to see his Lord crucified. We'll come back next week when we give you more insights on the story of the week. We'll see you next week.